Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Talent Intelligence podcast. I am Nicky Patterson, Head of Growth at Solutions Driven. I'm joined by Claire Murray, Head of Marketing, and we are joined by the CEO of Workramp, Ted Blosser. Ted, welcome. Claire, welcome.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on. Workramp are obviously doing amazing things in the LMS world at the moment. We are a very recent client in adopting the tool at the moment and very much enjoying it. So, really good to get some insight from Ted today on various topics. Really looking forward to this. Claire, do you want to get us started?
Definitely. So, Ted, before we came on today, I did a little bit of research on your LinkedIn page, and the first thing I'd like to ask you is, can you tell me a little bit about your own personal background, your personal professional background, and how that fed into Workramp starting up?
Yeah, for sure. So a little background on myself. I won't go too long, but I came out of college here in Northern California and went into sales, started working at Cisco Systems and Sales. It was a great way to kind of understand how to get your basics around selling to large enterprises. Then I made the switch. I saw the world trending in the direction of SaaS and software and made the switch over into a company called Box. I was an early employee there, got to watch some really great people like Aaron Levy and see how they operated, how they built. They were kind of the hot kid on the block back in about 2010, 2011 was really when they were coming up and when I started there. And then transitioned into starting Workramp. And that's a little bit about my background. We could talk more about Workramp from there, but I did about 5 years at Box and then started here at Workramp. And I have a kind of eclectic background ranging from sales experience. And then when I was at Box, I did sales and also product management, which we can talk about later today. But that was kind of the transition, personal background into what I'm doing today. And I'm living here in Redwood City here with a recent newborn and a family of 5 now. So if I sound tired, it's only because of that. Late night feedings right now.
Yeah, I feel your pain there. Let's touch on your early career. I think one thing we've really noticed over the past few years, we recruit for a lot of sales roles globally, and we're noticing that even from the SDR level, so much importance is on progression and learning and coaching and different things. Talk us through being an AE and how that really set you up for the foundation of your entire career.
Yeah. So glad I went into sales to start. It's actually an accident. It's actually a funny story. So
nobody means to be a salesperson, right?
Yeah, I know. It was so I had an electrical engineering degree at Santa Clara University. So I went to the career fair at that Cisco Systems was having, and there was 2 lines. They said, "Hey, there's a technical route and there's the AE route." And I asked the person, they go, "Which line do you want to go into?" I said, "Hey, what makes more money?" They go the AE route. And so that was the simple decision that set me off into this sales trajectory rather than this technical trajectory. And starting in sales there, I got to go to actually a 1-year training program. This was back in the day when IBM did it, Cisco did it, Sun did it. So I did a 1-year full training program on all the basics of sales. And so from objection handling to negotiation to they made us cold call in kind of dark closets where you would just have to cold call all day. And I still remember all those memories, but the foundation has been so critical for everything else I've done in my career. And so I've loved that, but I've also taken the mindset, if you want to really become a founder, is having a strong sales background is amazing, but you do need to round that out. And that's why later in my career, I moved into other areas of the business too. But sales was an amazing foundation to start with. And I was lucky to kind of stumble into that.
Awesome. I mean, I think it definitely would build up that tenacity and the highs and lows and the different elements of that there. But then obviously moving into the product side, you get to see the whole whole other side of the business and how it's run and how it works. And yeah, I mean, for me, it for sure fills all the gaps and probably put you in a good position to then go and be a leader.
Totally. And the thing is, when you want to become more well-rounded, it takes a ton of work. I remember when I was the first person at Box to move from sales to product management. And actually, I remember seeing an email from the CEO that he did not condone the move. He's like, why are we moving someone from sales to product management? The VP at the time showed me the email, and I had this chip on my shoulder that said, hey, look, I'm going to prove people wrong. But I had to put the work into it. Nikki, you're a soccer player, right? It's like when you have a chip on your shoulder, you just kind of work harder for it. And I actually spent time just getting very technical. I picked up programming on the side, was writing my own projects, writing code. And by the time I was kind of done through that process, I was more technical than every PM at the company. And so it's one of those things where, hey, if you do want to kind of build those foundational elements, whether you're in sales or marketing or moving from BDR to AE, you got to put in the work to make those moves.
I think loads of people like to prove people wrong. There's plenty coaches or managers, I'm sure, that the people say, hey, did you see how I did there? I wonder what that guy thinks of you now, right?
Yeah. Well, he let me make the move at the end of the day. He didn't block it, which was good. So I'm grateful for that.
Brilliant.
Back when I first started my career, I was in sales as well, and I was in tech sales, making the company quite a lot of money. And I did the whole I want to move departments thing. And to be honest, I think that getting that move through was one of the biggest achievements of my career, which brings me on to my next question, which is, what is one of the biggest achievements of your career?
That's a great one. About that one for a second. So we, it's funny that question is actually the exact. So we went through Y Combinator for those of you who don't know Y Combinator, like Stripe went through, Dropbox went through it, DoorDash, great companies. And so a lot of people don't know this. That's actually one of the questions on the applications. What's your biggest accomplishment? And I was thinking when I was answering that question on the application, like, everybody has better achievement. Like probably everybody has one-ups everyone else on those achievements, right? Because these are world-class people applying to Y Combinator. And so I had to think long and hard about that question, about what's the biggest accomplishment, what's unique. And actually I put on that application, I just had my first daughter at the time, having a family was my biggest career accomplishment. And it was in the context of career, especially for having two working parents, having a family, being able to do a startup. There's something really unique. And it's actually, I look at kind of my business life now, there's always that next milestone, Series C, Series D, going public, that next big customer. It's never going to stop, right? You're always going to look for that next big thing as your biggest accomplishment. But for me personally, it's been the ability to now balance having a successful career, having a partner she has a successful career as well, and having kids that you can provide for as well. So I've been really proud of myself to actually get to a point where we start paying our own salaries a couple of years ago and doing well as a company. I would say that's the biggest accomplishment, is being able to balance a successful business career, be a great example to your kids, and then also raise them well and provide for them. So, but that was my answer at the time, was having a family. And I think it was unique because Jessica Livingston, I think she's the co-founder of YC, interviewed me, and I think she pulled out that application is a little bit unique because I think she just had her first child as well too around that time. Great question though.
What I found funny there is you mentioned, Series D, IPO, all these, it's going to get more and more and more. Is that what you're thinking in the family as well? Just more and more kids as well, or is that you done now?
Yeah, we might stop at 3. I don't in the Bay Area here. It gets really hard to afford any schools after 3. So we'll probably stop at 3. We have our hands full there, but
going to run out of real estate real quick.
I know, not stopping. But I have some founder friends that are like 4 or 5. I'm like, where do you even sleep? It's crazy. Where do you have time for anything?
Definitely. So focusing more now on Workramp, we are massively enjoying our entry point into being a customer of you guys. Where did the idea of Workramp come from?
Yeah, so go back to the origin day. So the company started with my co-founder Arshman and I. We were both at Box, good friends when we were there, and he was my first pick of a CTO when I wanted to start Workramp. And the origin story was we really just started with we kind of knew we wanted to go tackle a big space around learning because we had kind of two requirements starting the company. One was we need a gigantic category, which was learning. And we needed to build a great company where we loved working, where we want to skip into work every day and build the culture exactly how we want to build it. And when we started, we said, hey, how do we go attack this learning market? And we actually found a pain point around onboarding at the time. And it was really great advice from most start founders will give you is, hey, what's the kind of wedge in the door? And we started with just a simple onboarding product, helped. And at that time in late 2015, economy was booming, kind of like it is kind of post the heart of the pandemic, but everyone was hiring, everyone was having trouble with onboarding. So we just built a simple onboarding solution. And then over time, our client just said, hey, can you add on like, hey, we want to do continuous training. We want to do sales training. We want to do customer success training. And I think the learning lesson there is, hey, start small, get your first set of customers with a really core use case, and then listen to your customers over time and help them develop the product. And so by just building what the customers were asking, we kind of lifted our heads above water in 2017, 2018, and we're looking around like, hey, we got a full-scale learning management system here, which was really what we were disrupting now. And that's where we've evolved to, and we've continued to evolve as becoming the best LMS on the market right now too. And so that's really where we've evolved over time. But the key to that was start small, listen to customers, and then continue to iterate from there.
As our usage is evidence, and it's obviously turned out to be a very great tool, which it sounds as though you are going to just keep making better and better and better. Yes.
And that is our main goal, is continue to innovate on the product side every month or every quarter that we continue to progress.
Excellent.
Now you spoke there about disruption, and do you think that you have disrupted the market? And in the last year, with the effects of the pandemic and obviously people onboarding remotely, how has that almost disrupted your company?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in our market, for anybody who knows about the learning market, it's basically the disruption has actually been kind of easy because all the old providers were really bad. They were very clunky. Anyone you interview said, oh, I hated my training system. And so what we've done now is really create a beautiful UI, beautiful UX, something that people find engaging. It integrates into all the greatest tools that you have within your tech stack as well too. And so we felt like that the disruption hasn't been incredibly difficult to do because the previous providers were not that great. And so really for us, it's all about, hey, now as we disrupt, how do we continue to add on value added products and services on top of that for our clients? So for example, about 2 years ago, we rolled out our external facing LMS. And that's been great for really training our customers and our customers' partners. You have great clients like Reddit, Algolia, Branch using that product. And it just shows, hey, we've now kind of disrupted the traditional LMS, but how do we continue adding more and more services onto it that are game changing for us?
Great answer.
And I actually didn't answer your COVID question too with remote work. And that's I would say the big thing there is that has been accelerant for the business. I believe solutions driven is pretty remote as well. We're now hybrid remote with employees all over the world. And that's been a big accelerant when you think about not being able to be in the same office with people, looking over their shoulder, training them, helping them learn. That has been huge for our market overall. And so now we can confidently say, hey, I'm going to onboard someone who's in Norway, the same as someone in Australia, right? And you now have the ability to provide this consistent experience, asynchronous as well, using our platform.
I think that's something that really is really interesting to us. You know, we have, I think, 14 or 15 new starters going to be joining us over the course of the next three or 4 weeks, and probably on a similar trajectory. You know, you guys have went, well, I think you guys are even more. I think went from about 30 employees pre-pandemic to pushing 100 now, I think, from what I've seen. And the onboarding of the early employees versus now will be a completely different experience for you guys, never mind your customers. And for us, I would have told you 2 years ago, somebody needs to be right there for me to show them everything. And, you know, I think that COVID has really accelerated a lot of people's thinking and plans. And I guess that's something I was going to touch on now. I mean, you guys got funding almost a year ago, and you have been on a hiring spree and a customer collection spree ever since, I think. So what does the next 12, 24 months look like for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, you're right. We went from 30 to almost over 100 here in the span of 12 months. So it's just been really interesting to watch that growth. For us right now, you're going to see all the typical things like investing in sales, marketing, product, and really for us is to create a really strong foundation to really go, I call it internally, go long with the business. And so we want to go to IPO and beyond. And for us, the next 12 to 18 months is really about creating a solid foundation on the product side, on our sales fundamentals, and on the repeatability of everything we're doing. I think one big thing you see on the market is people just looking for a lot of those short-term wins, getting to the next funding round. And if you aren't careful, you can fall off the cliff after a Series B or Series C because your growth will slow down. I can tell you so many of my founder friends, for example, fall off that cliff between 10 to 25 million ARR. Their growth really slows down. Yeah. And so for us, it's really around how this next 12 to 18 months is build for the long term, continue growing, but really think about the long term in mind, because you see these recent IPOs of the GitLabs of the world. Those companies have really built solid foundations to then actually prop their large employee bases and actually large customers on top of that great foundation as well too.
Off the back of that, you know, because you see a lot of companies in their first 2-3 years really shoot up quickly, and they don't build that foundation. You know, in many ways, you guys are a scale up, not a startup. You know, I think of that as us too. We're 23 years in and being fairly flat in terms of number, but it was launching a category during the pandemic that has really transformed our business. And then you realize, you know, this product, this solution we have really fits. And when you start getting the testimonials from customers, and like you said earlier, you start to actually implement solutions based on the feedback you get from customers, that's when things can really blossom. And you know, I just think it's unbelievable the growth you guys have had in such a short space of time.
Yeah, and you're totally right. The companies that don't often get admired are the slow burn companies, right? If you look at, I digest podcasts all the time. I was just listening to Bill.com founder as an example, where it took him 10, 12 years to really pick up traction. And now he's off to the races. UiPath, I think, is 16 years to his first million ARR, right? Then really took off. And so the companies I think that really are category defining, that really can survive in the long term, are the ones that build the right foundation up front, and then really have accelerant like Solutions Driven had, where they really can take off from there. Just like when you had Manny on from Outreach, they actually built a really strong foundation. Yeah. And then the market timing just hit perfectly, and they just really took off from there. But it took them a little while. I think they had a little product market fit issues originally, but built a nice, strong foundation and really took off.
Well, I think as well, it goes for that entrepreneurial spirit. You know, I think there was a lot of challenges and failures in a lot of the companies that really grow and blossom. I mean, could you give us even what one of the biggest challenges has been for you over the last few years?
Oh man, that's a good one. I'll tell a really good story. So have you heard the startup trough of disillusionment? Have you heard of that? It's like the Paul Graham. So you've probably seen that chart. So it's you get all this press. Yeah, you get the press from TechCrunch, you get your funding round, and then you just drop. It's called the startup trough of disillusionment. And you drop for about 2 years, and then you kind of come slowly back up, and that's when you rise out of the ashes. And we totally had that. We went through that perfectly. And I called the wandering the desert years, where there was a couple years really in the beginning where you didn't really know yourself and you didn't have conviction in your beliefs, and you were kind of doing what the startup world taught you should do. I'll give you a perfect example of this. So I remember when we said, hey, every startup is doing value mapping. We should get values for our company. So we thought that was a startup thing to do. We all went into, our team at the time went into a conference room, and we came out with 12 values. And I remember at the time, I was like, I don't even agree with half of these. And I couldn't remember them. And it was like a one-time exercise, and we never talked about the values again. I didn't have very strong conviction around them either. I just thought it was the right thing to do given we were a startup. Yep. And I had this other founder advisor tell me, he's like, Ted, no, these values are your personal values. You and Arsh are the founders. The two of you need to go in a room, come up with values that you truly believe in, and live and breathe those. And we came out with 4 key values coming out of that, and we run the company off of those values. We talk about them every day. And that's a great example where we learned to just have really strong faith in what we were doing. And if we hadn't had done that, we wouldn't really, that's really been the foundation of our culture too. If we hadn't had made that personal decision, I don't think our culture would have been as good as it is today, because we built the back of the culture off of those 4 values.
Awesome.
What are the 4 values?
Yeah, I could go into that next too. So I love these values. So always be improving. That is just the ability to make a ton of mistakes and improve. We kind of stole that from Ray Dalio. Big hedge fund manager is really about constant improvement. Customer focus, which is, a lot of companies say that, but we truly kind of live and breathe it. We put the customer first. One team, which is a collaborative value, which if you ever came into Workramp, like, we're almost over collaborative in our kind of remote world. And then the last one, it's actually kind of unique, is operational excellence. And this really says we celebrate all the small stuff. Like, for example, we have a great outbound team, and outbound is like the biggest grind of any job in the world, right? And we give them so much praise, where it's usually taken for granted that you can make 600 dials in a week and 700 emails in a week. That, like, we don't take that for granted. We celebrate that operational excellence, and that's why we keep it as a core value of ours.
Awesome values. Awesome.
Very awesome. And obviously they feed into your culture, which is good, because that is the next thing that we're going to talk about. We are obviously a recruitment company, so the next bit that we are going to ask you questions about is recruitment and culture.
For sure.
I'm just going to circle back to talking about we spoke about skipping into work every day earlier on, and you've just hired a new executive team. You've been hiring virtually across all your positions. So what does your induction process for success look like?
Got it. And induction, you mean onboarding process into the company?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Just want to clarify too. So the skipping to work was something I stole. I think Jeff Bezos said it in an article, and he's like, I skip into work every day. Just loved coming in to run Amazon every day. And that's the value. That's what we try to promote here. It's like, hey, you shouldn't have like yes, everyone has the Sunday scaries, if you've heard of that, but by the time you get started, you should be like, hey, I'm excited to work here. I'm excited to get on the computer. I'm excited to call customers. I'm excited to build products. And so we push that. We're always kind of pushing the envelope. If we feel like, hey, this isn't fun or exciting for someone, how do we make sure we actually make this a great place for them to want to wake up every morning and start their work day? And then a big part of that then is actually making sure that onboarding process is one of the best onboarding process they can have, especially in this remote world. And I would call it, there's two parts. There's the operational part, and then there's kind of the cultural part. The operational part, we use our own product, obviously. We do, for everybody, we do a 3-week onboarding process, which basically has gates at the end of every week. And so if you finish week 1, it's different depending on your role, but you can imagine sales, your week 1 is a demo, week 2 is doing a discovery call, week 3 is a full disco discovery call. And so it has very good milestones. And we now have onboarding classes and a great enablement manager called Stephanie, her name's Stephanie Midoff, who's running processes like that. And so that's the operational portion. I think it's critical to make sure you have all the foundational elements in there so your employees and team members can just learn. And we recommend in those first few weeks, it's just learning. Don't jump into your pipeline. You're gonna have plenty of time to work on your pipeline or your role or the code you're writing. So don't rush into it, just learn as much as possible. So that's kind of one big aspect, is the operational portion. And then the second big aspect is really cultural. And so within those onboarding paths, we recommend highly to meet as many people in the company as you can. And so in the onboarding path, we typically recommend having 3 to 4 one-on-ones every week with somebody that's not your immediate team. And so, for example, we just had our new head of marketing come in, Jack Foster, and her onboarding path was to meet various people in engineering, in support, in sales. And so it is from an IC all the way to executives. And so that was actually something we borrowed from Jeffrey Weiner at LinkedIn. I think he said his first quarter, he met with like 300 people at LinkedIn. It was something nuts. Wow. And so it's a big thing. And that's part of our one team value, is that if you can build those bonds, it's really going to accelerate the collaboration that we have within the company. So that's our kind of onboarding process in a nutshell: operational, and then also cultural, which is really focused around our one team value.
Yeah. How do you keep that culture going, and how do you arrange all those meetings and keep everyone so close when you're currently expanding so rapidly?
Yeah, this is one where I sought out a lot of advice and did a lot of reading. I think everyone's pretty unique, and you probably see a theme of this. I'm always just borrowing from other companies or people that I'm talking to. Hopefully you guys, you both are too.
I'm going to be feeling some of this after this call, Ted, so don't worry.
And so one of the big things, I was reading Reed Hastings' most recent book. And one of the big things he talks about is a lot of context setting, and then letting people have autonomy within that context. And so in the book, there's this kind of, he shows a tree trunk and its branches, where Reed Hastings is kind of the tree trunk setting context, but someone at the leaf, let's say a producer of Squid Games, can decide, hey, I'm going to go figure out how to go produce Squid Game. But that person has really good context of what the company is driving towards. And recently it's, hey, international growth, Squid Games, it all worked out really well, right? And for us to drive the culture, we like to set a lot of context through frameworks and then meetings that drive those frameworks. So we have a couple frameworks within the company. Some are very common, like our OKR framework, which we practice very heavily. We also have a framework called the Cadence, which I borrowed from David Sachs, which shows, hey, what do we do every week within a quarter? So you can see like, hey, what's every department kind of working on in terms of major milestones. And then we have our values framework, which we just talked about. And one last framework is kind of a mission statement framework. I borrowed this one from John Chambers at Cisco. It's called the Vision Strategy Execution Framework. And this just gives people North Star of what we're doing 10 years out, but then also zooms into what we're doing 1 year out, which is building the best LMS. But also our company knows, hey, 10 years out, we want to empower every professional to reach their full potential through learning. But to step back and answer your question, I see culture and building great culture, it's just giving great context, giving great frameworks, and then letting great people loose within that context. And so that's kind of our mindset. And then the meetings along the way to make that happen.
I mean, amazing answer. Again, I see so much synergy in your approach and I guess our CEO's approach. We've got our OKRs. We're obviously adopting the LMS. We're very much continuously improving what we're doing as individuals, and I think hiring and retaining talented individuals is what makes people successful. I think you're only as good as the people you have and how ambitious and how much those people want to improve. Our CEO Gavin at the start of the year just said, I'm going to say 2 words, and this is what I want the whole year to be about. And it was complacency and momentum. We'd built all this momentum. So if we focus on the momentum of the journey and never get complacent, then we'll continuously improve. And it was just such a simple way, but there's so many things that are then fed off of that. I guess I could ask you a million questions still, but I've probably got 2 left. So let me start with, you guys clearly have an amazing overall value proposition, and your candidate value proposition is going to be different role to role. Do you think it's harder to hire top talent or retain top talent?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I'll say for us right now, I wrote this blog. So every weekend I'll write a blog internally, and we'll have guest posters on there as well internally from different departments. And one of the things I said is, hey, you're right now in the world, you're either a company with a great resignation, you're either a company attracting talent or a company repelling talent. It's kind of binary. And we feel like right now we're squarely in the camp of the companies attracting talent. And so I don't take that for granted. Like attracting and keeping it is super hard to do. And keeping it is kind of going back to Claire's original question. It's all about the culture and skipping into work and making sure that is all set. I would say of the 2 right now, the more acute pain point for probably everybody is the attracting, and that's why solutions driven is doing so well. I was actually just talking to a founder of or an executive of a really hot Seattle-based company, and he was like, "We have all the money in the world right now, and we just can't hire. It's not about the money. Everyone's raising a ton of money. We just can't bring on the right talent, and or enough of it. And it's like we have like 1 million recs open, we just literally can't fill them." And it's kind of the story you hear from most companies. And so really, when you think about that, when money is not the issue and open roles aren't the issue, then what is going to be your differentiator? If everyone has enough money, everyone has recs, what's going to be your differentiator? And then that's where I think you parlay the kind of talent discussion from earlier is like, that is your differentiator. When we close candidates, really like 9 times out of 10, people are like, hey, the reason I chose you is because of the great people I met in the interview process that I really vibe with, and I'm choosing you for the people that I met. So we actually, when we heard that, we actually just started infusing more people into the interview process, because we actually found out that was our competitive differentiator. It was not the speed, was not the pay, was not the equity. It was, hey, the people you meet in the process that was selling the candidate.
You're giving away some golden nuggets there, Ted.
Yeah.
But I think it is true, right? You've been continuously improving the product, the solution that you guys have. You're basically saying you're refining your interview process and recruitment process as you went along as well. There are plenty of companies out there right now struggling to hire top talent. Claire just posted something, I think, yesterday about, that almost the entire population of Scotland, is 5 million, but 4 million people in the US moved roles in August alone in 1 month.
Wow.
And it seems like there's movement going on everywhere, but at the same time, nobody can get their hands on exactly what they need in abundance. Please feel free to send me the name and number of whoever is struggling in Seattle. That's no issue. I guess
never stop selling.
always be closing, right? But like I said, the attraction piece is hard. You guys have clearly nailed that, and the onboarding piece, that is exactly what you do. I would fully expect you to nail that. I guess keeping that talent, obviously you're reinvesting in just the passion that you have. My last question would be something that is really the biggest learning point for me in my career right now is coaching. And
Yep.
you've mentioned in a couple of articles I've read about the culture of coaching. Could you tell us a little bit about the secrets you guys have there?
Yeah, that's a really good one. The post I actually just recently did was I was this is in the pandemic days, and or the heart of the pandemic, when you're working right next to your spouse or your partner. And I was giving coaching to a rep, and she worked at she had previously worked at a stodgy kind of older firm. And I was giving one of the sales reps coaching after a sales call, and she came in after. I was like, "Hey, why are you being so harsh to your employee? Why are you telling him all this feedback? Like, isn't he like going to get really upset about that and quit?" And I was like, no, it's totally fine. It's part of our culture, and we do it in any role. Like, I get coaching from whoever wants to give it to me. For example, my co-founder gives me coaching after a lot of internal presentations, and we really have this coaching culture where anyone can give feedback to each other. But we do have kind of ground rules around that feedback, which we also kind of stole from Netflix, which is it has to be constructive, has to be kind. So we have some groundwork, some ground rules laid, but beyond that, we give it often. And so one of the big things we do here is part of our always be improving value is to say, hey, we're always coaching each other, and it helps us all get better. If you look at, we had a sales rep join our team recently, and from his previous company, he's like, man, my previous company was like a JV sales team compared to this team. It's like a varsity, junior varsity compared to varsity. And a lot of that's because we've really built up teams like our sales team through amazing coaching on a day-to-day basis too. And so we try to fuse that across the board. And it's not just sales, it's also engineering. We do a ton in client outcomes, which is our CS team. We do it in support all the way down to, hey, if there's like a ticket and the tone could have been better, we will give that feedback directly to the support team saying, hey, maybe emphasize like, hey, we're sorry about that issue, but in a more empathetic way. And I just gave that last week when I saw a big escalation ticket, is, hey, we could have shown a little bit more empathy on that, and that team is going to get better on that next ticket that they work on. So yes, it's a big part of our culture, but again, ties back to one of those 4 core values, which is the always be improving value internally.
See, I think our founder, Walter, he's 71 at the moment, and probably one of the sharpest in our business. No other international recruitment company has a Walter, right? So we are so lucky. And I think a lot of the time we come up with things like this, or our methodology for candidates, and Gavin, our CEO, might say, hey, we better not share that with everyone. People are going to copy that. And Walter will say, yeah, but nobody will do it like us. People will try it, and they'll try and adopt the culture of coaching for a month or two. You really need to live and breathe it and believe in it for it really to pay off. And it sounds like you guys adopting that early and now growing things and laying the foundation, like you say, has set you up for so much success.
Yeah, what I love about the success process you had behind there is just an example of, we talked about earlier, is especially in the remote world, people need the frameworks and the context to be able to work within. And so just that you explicitly call it out gives people the ability to say, okay, now I know how to operate within this framework. And now I think you've created that category. It's RPI. Is that a
recruitment process intelligence?
Yes, RPI. Yes. And so that's a great example of a framework you're setting up. So that's what I love so much about the RPI kind of context, which is great.
Awesome. Well, listen, awesome is exactly what this has been today, Ted. You and the content, absolute fire. So I really look forward to Claire publishing this over the next couple of weeks. I'm sure our listeners will be all over it, and we continue success for the next 4 or 5 years, and look forward to working with you.
Awesome. Claire, Nikki, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm off to read some of these 100 books and methodologies that you have mentioned today. So that's my evening sorted. Thank you for coming on, Ted.
We're all just soaking everything up like sponges. So yeah, this is really fun.